These are the solutions for day 69's warm-ups, and let's take a look at our first problem here. It talks about Sandra rode 162 miles in 12 hours. They want to find Sandra's average rate of speed. So that means miles per hour. So what we end up needing to do is divide 12, the number of hours, into the number of miles, 162. So I see 12 does go into 16 one time. I subtract and I'm left with 4 left over. 12 goes into 42 3 times. It makes 36. And I end up having to borrow a bit, and I end up with 6. And so I'm going to add that decimal point, bring that decimal point straight up into the quotient, bring the 0 down, and do 12 into 60. And that goes in there 5 times evenly. And that makes 60 as the number that we have to subtract from 60, which gives us a remainder of 0. So we're done. 13 5/10 miles per hour is how fast Sandra was riding her bike. And it talks about how there are 28 red chairs and 24 blue chairs. We're going to write a ratio of red to blue in simplest form. So start with the red chairs, 28 red chairs, and then there's 24 blue chairs. And so what we want to do is we want to reduce this fraction, take out that common factor. And so I see that we can divide each of these by 4. And so when I do that, I'm left with 7 over 6. And that is my answer in simplest form. Here it talks about how Greg walks 75 hundredths of a mile in 25 hundredths of an hour. At this rate, how long will it take Greg to walk 7.5 miles? So we've got a proportion here. So let's write a ratio of this one. 75 hundredths of a mile. So we're going to write 0.75 m for miles. Actually, I'll go ahead and write out miles. And then it's in 0.25 hours. So 0.25 hours. So our next ratio is going to be exactly the same, except different numbers. So it says how long. How long will it take? So that's talking about time. So x hours, and then we have 75 or 7 5/10 miles. That goes on top of the fraction. So you notice how when I write the proportion, it's always miles per hour, miles per hour. And so before we get going on this, let's see if we can reduce this problem at all. See, I see that actually on this one, notice how this number here is almost the same as this value. All I have to do to come up with this answer is move this decimal point over 1 space. And that's just because if I do that, it becomes the same value as this. Now, if I do that, I have to do the same thing with this value here. So I see the answer is going to end up being 2.5. 2.5 hours is the time it would end up taking. So that's one way to do the problem. Sometimes we can get away with doing that. Other times we do have to cross multiply. And so in this case, I didn't have to do that, but I might have to do that on the next problem. So 2 5/10 hours, I got those fractions to be the same by just multiplying each of these numbers by 10. That moved the decimal over 1 space to the right. Here it says Ted has 20 baseballs and 15 softballs. Write a ratio in simplest form of the number of softballs to baseballs. And so when we go ahead and do this, we're going to start with the softballs, 15 over 20 baseballs, and then just reduce this by taking out that common factor. Divide each one by 5. That gives us 3/4. And that is our answer. Well, here it says Al earned $341.25 for working 35 hours. We want to find the number of dollars earned per hour of work. So dollars per hour means we're dividing by the number of hours into the number of dollars he earned. And we start off by seeing how many times 35 goes into 3. It doesn't. It doesn't go into 34, so it does go into 341. So I'm going to start with a 9 because it almost goes into 34, but not quite. So I think it's going to be the biggest number of 9. Multiply it makes 45. And then 4 plus 27 makes 31. So I go ahead and do the subtraction. Make sure you borrow, though. So we end up with 26. Now bring that decimal point straight up. Bring down the 2. And now I'm thinking of 3 into 26. Well, it goes in 8 times, but this is not 30. It's actually 35. So let's try a 7. See if this works. Gives us a place to start. That makes 35. 3 and 21 add to make 24, and we do the subtraction. Again, we got to borrow a bit, And this changes to a 5, so that makes 1 and a 7. So that does work out. So we have now 175. So we saw that 7 times the number made 245. Let's try a smaller number. 3 times 5 makes 15. That's pretty close. Let's try 5. It makes 25. And 15 and 2 makes 17. So that worked out exactly right. So the answer would be $9.75 per hour. So there is our answer. Well, here it says, in his last 13 times at bat in Snowline Little League, Santiago got 8 hits. And then if he is at bat 65 times for the season, how many hits will he get if his average remains the same? So it's a proportion we're setting up. So 13 times at bat. So let's do 13 at bats over, and then he got 8 hits. 8 hits. Now, if we're going to set up a ratio that's exactly the same as this last one, it needs to have the same units in the same location. So it says if he has 65 times at bat, so 65 at bats, notice the at bats I put on top of the fraction. So as long as I'm consistent, it will work. So I had at bats on top, I should have hits on the bottom. It says how many hits. We don't know how many hits, so let's do X hits. So now we go ahead and solve. I don't see any cross-canceling in this case. Canceling up and down, I should say. So I'm just going to cross-multiply. So I have 13x equals, and then I have to do 8 times 65. So I wasn't so fortunate. There might be a number that I could multiply 13 by to make 65, and I believe there is, but if I don't see it right away, then I'd have to do this other method of cross-multiplying. So I have 8 times 65, and that makes 40, carry a 4, 48, it makes 52, so it's 520 equals 13x. So I'm dividing by 13, and 13 does go into 52. It goes in there 4 times evenly. So again, you can see it this way. 13 into 52 4 times makes 52. And I still have the 0 here, so I have to add that extra 0. So 40 is the number of hits he can expect if he has 65 at-bats. That'd be a pretty good average. Well, those are the types of problems that we'll see on this week's test. And this is again the warm-ups for day 69.